I've just got a few very short comments to make, a few points to make. First of all, we now do have a bell, so if any speaker shows any sign of overrunning, then a bell sound will ring. Secondly, social media. We would like to get some publicity for this event, so if anyone here is on Twitter or Facebook, then please do tweet to your friends and Twitter followers, particularly if they're actuaries, so that we can get some kind of additional publicity. Okay, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is Niel Fourie. Niel is the Public Policy Actuary of the Actuarial Society of South Africa. He is a registered retirement fund valuator, chartered enterprise risk actuary, and a fellow of the Actuarial Society of South Africa, Namibia, and the UK. In his role at the Actuarial Society of South Africa, he is responsible for coordinating the various technical committees, engagement with the regulator, and local and international stakeholder engagement. Prior to joining the Actuarial Society of South Africa, he was head of the Actuarial Department at Jacques Malan Consultants and Actuaries. Thank you very much. I'd like to hand over to Niel.
Right, hello everybody. I've actually got quite a loud voice, so just tell me if I should take this away a little bit. Okay. If I see you going through your ears, I know I'm talking a bit too loud. Okay, so it's really a privilege for me to be here. It's my first time in Zim, but I really feel at home. There's a lot of familiar faces. People that I've met at conferences, people I've even met in Washington DC of all places, and so on. So it's good to be here. And I've actually worked with quite a few people from Zim. I don't know if you know Taura Ganizanwa, Itai Mukadira, Tatena Mohonde, Clayton Mariga, and Bigdan Shiriapenga. So I know some of you might know the names. I used to work with them. And we've got quite a few students here in the room today, so it's going to be a bit of a classroom atmosphere here, so there's going to be a bit of interaction. I'll ask you some questions and so on, and I want you guys to participate. But we've got a nice interactive session going, okay? Because governance isn't always the most exciting type of topic, but I'll try to make it a bit more exciting, okay? And just on the credentials, it would be nice to also, one of these days, have a fellow of the Actuarial Society of Zim. And I don't know if you're going to call it FAZ, but it might be something that you should consider, and I'll also add that to one of my credentials. It would be nice. Okay, so, but before we get into the governance side, let's just take a step back and see, when you think about retirement, a lot of people, they've actually got these dreams about what they're going to do once they retire. They think they're going to buy a nice house or buy that car that they were always looking for, or have nice holidays, and just have meals at nice restaurants and so on. So that's the pipe dream that many people have. But most people don't actually realize that if you save for retirement, you most likely won't become rich. But if you don't save for retirement, you most likely will become poor. So I think that's a key takeaway. And a lot of people that I find, because I'm also a pension fund valuator, I think if they've somewhere in their career they've been part of a pension fund, they'd actually be fine. But we all know you actually need to contribute enough, you need to stay in the fund long enough, and the returns needs to be adequate. So we see the reality is either people will live in a type of environment that they actually didn't envision, or their retirement will look like this. They'll actually need to keep on working once they retire. Okay, so that's just a bit of background to see what you actually put it into context, how you can actually ensure that people actually have an adequate retirement. So let's see what we'll be covering today. Firstly, we'll look at what are the characteristics of a good pension scheme, and then we'll focus more on the governance side. So governance is actually just a process whereby you actually want to achieve integrity. So governance is actually not the end goal, it's the integrity in the pension scheme or in the system that you actually want to achieve. So we'll stand still there a bit, and then at the end we'll just briefly touch. It's not really case studies, it's probably more examples. We'll just quickly look at that as well. So the characteristics of good pension schemes. So it can probably be summarized into 3 key areas. The first one, adequacy. So obviously you want, when you retire, you want to have enough money that will actually carry you through until the day you die. Okay, so that's a key thing. The other thing is it needs to be sustainable. So it doesn't help you've got one a system that's great for one generation and they've got big benefits, but the generation following needs to pay for it and there's actually no money left to actually fund their retirement. And then the final one, integrity. So you want people to trust that people needs to get value for money. Okay. So firstly, let's look at adequacy. Before I go to my slides on adequacy, I want to hear from the room, what would you say are metrics that you can use, and what metrics are you using in Zimbabwe that are indications of adequacy of a pension once you retire? What are the type of things you look at? Yes, yeah, at the front. Go for it. Yes, Tawana.
I think in Zim, mostly minimum pension.
Minimum pension.
That's what
The regulator looks at. Okay. Something else?
Yes, we look at the net replacement ratio.
Yes, replacement ratios. Something else? Okay. That's similar to what we in South Africa will also have. The key one in South Africa is probably the replacement ratio. And on the, how do you think actuaries can become involved? What are the type of things we can do to ensure that we actually get to those targeted net replacement ratios or to the targeted minimum pension level? What are the type of designs or things that actuaries can actually do to actually promote that we get to that adequacy levels we want to get to? What would you say? Yes, sir.
maybe continuous monitoring of
Okay. The gentleman here at the front said continuous monitoring of the contribution to ensure that people contribute enough. Another one? Yes, sir.
Benefit projections to see what is the likely benefits. So we do benefit projections to see what the likely pension will be, and if it's not adequate, what additional contributions may need to be invested.
So ongoing communication and monitoring and so on that you're actually on track. Okay. I think that mic's a bit not lekker. Lekker, I don't know. It's you probably know the word lekker as well. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
suitability of investment strategy.
Suitability of investment strategy. Yes. That's all type of things. So I'll quickly go to the list that I've put down. So there's various design features, and that's where us as actuaries can and should become involved, is in, say, like for instance, tax incentives. In South Africa, we're taxed in our pension system on an EET system. They call it exempt tax. So you get exemption, tax exemption on the amount you put in. You get exemption on your investment returns, and you only tax once you actually start drawing income. So I don't know what if you've got special tax provisions here in Zimbabwe to also encourage people to save. Then preservation. That's one of the key things that we see in South Africa that actually destroys so much value, is that when people leave, they actually take their money, they go out for a nice holiday, they spend their money. They're in the UK, they see that people, when they take their money, they mostly spend it on a new kitchen or a holiday. So I don't know what the people here in Zimbabwe spend their money on. But and the thing is, if you start at say 25, then 15% net savings will probably be enough. If you only start at 30, then 20% will probably be enough. If you start at at 40, then you'll probably need about 25 to 30% to actually ensure that you can retire comfortably. So those are the things that's very important. Compulsory annuitization is also something that's important to look at, especially these days. People are living longer. Ensure that you've got that longevity protection in place. Compulsion to ensure that people are actually in funds, to ensure that you've got good coverage. And something that's been increasingly getting attention in South Africa is costs, and to ensure that the various service providers and parties involved aren't actually taking too much of the fees from people who save. Because we know that if you pay 1% of fees too much over a 40-year time horizon, your retirement capital will be 20% less once you retire. So 1% doesn't seem much, but it all adds up at the end of the day. And also the design features. So that's something internationally where there's quite a bit of research on, just to see how you can nudge people through defaults to make the right decisions. And then, like I mentioned, communication, monitoring, and so on. And also ensuring that there's enough players in the industry to actually ensure there's adequate competition. So that's on adequacy. Then sustainability. What measures do you think can you use to look at whether a pension system is sustainable? And there's silence. Okay, that one is probably, and also depends on the type of regime you're in South Africa. We've got more of a defined contribution regime, and in a lot of other countries they've got more of a defined benefit regime. But but in Africa, luckily they talk about, we've got I think the population dividend or something like that. We've got a lot of young people, yeah, where in a lot of other parts in the world they've got a lot of old people. So you'll see in places like Europe and so on, the number of people over the retirement age just keeps increasing and increasing, and the number of young people actually working is actually decreasing. So there's a big old age dependency ratio. And then also, if you've got a defined type benefit system in place, it's backed by the state. So if the state's having problems, then you as a pensioner will probably also be having problems. So things that you can actually do to ensure that a retirement system will be sustainable is on the retirement age. So that's what's been happening in a lot of places in the world. Have been putting up the retirement age. In South Africa, we like to do things differently, so we've actually reduced the retirement age for our state old age pension. Another thing that people can do is phased retirement, and that's something that's actually I think it's recently passed in legislation that once you reach retirement age, you don't actually need to draw a pension, you can actually keep on working. So we know when you've got a big pot of money, obviously you earn the returns on the returns you've already earned. So if you retire at 65, but you still keep on doing a little bit of work until say age 70, you could actually double your money or get 50% or 30% more in those extra years. So that's also something that's important. And then obviously funding in advance is important, and that's something that in South Africa we've got the GPF, that's the Government Employees Pension Fund, and that's one of the biggest funded pension funds in the world. I think it's got something like 1 trillion or more than a trillion rands worth of assets in there, and that's actually fully funded. So on the integrity side, what would you guys say is the measure for integrity in a pension system? Yes, sir. What would you say?
Regular checks and valuations. Check funds.
That's more of a design for. What would you say if you look at something and you say this scheme has integrity? What would you say? What would be a characteristic of that system? Yes.
I would say what was promised was delivered.
Okay. So it's basically trust. Trust and value for money and so on. So that's what I've got down there. So yeah, if a system with integrity, people can actually trust that they know if I save in the system, actually once I retire, I'm actually going to get something and it's going to be valuable. Okay, and things that the way that you can achieve this is, like you said, you've got the regulator involved, you've got regulators in check and so on, and you've got the right professional people in check. Okay. So now we're going to delve into the integrity part. So let's see how we can establish integrity in the pension system. Okay. So maybe I can just show you this, and that actually speaks to the integrity. If you actually have trust in something, but it doesn't actually always work out if you don't understand it correctly.
Close your eyes and just fall down, okay? Don't worry.
Okay, now Lauren's gonna catch you.
Close your eyes.
Okay, it's called the trust fall. Okay, trust fall. Ready, set, go.
So I think a big thing in integrity and pension systems, you also need to know what will be offered to you and also play your part. And that's where us as actually also become involved. The education side and speaking to members and so on, that is a very important part. This one, where did I put my clicker? Oh, I've got it here in my pocket. So there's actually some very good material on the internet, and I attend a lot of the IAA, the International Actuarial Association meetings, and we usually have someone from the OECD come and speak to us there. The OECD, it stands for the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, if I'm not mistaken. And they do a lot of like multinational type research and so on. So there's quite a bit of good material on there. So I'm not going to go through things in detail that you actually can just Google and read yourselves. But basically what it says is that the government, you need buy-in from the government. And the government is actually, if you take an analogy of a playground, they'll set the boundaries of the sandbox in which people can play. The regulator will be the policeman or the teacher that will actually see the people who actually need to play in the sandbox. It will be the various role players, the actuaries, the companies and so on, actually deliver on what they need to deliver. So the key thing is government. There needs to be input from government, and you need buy-in from the top. So the Minister of Finance or whoever is important in taking those decisions, there needs to be political will to actually seeing this succeed, and the right things need to be in place. For instance, conditions for effective regulation, you need to have, say, your pensions fund act in place. Then you need to set up companies to actually deliver those benefits and so on. You need to know what people will get when they're in a fund, how assets will be managed, what rights people will have. And then in that system, you'll need to put in a governance system for the systems in itself, and there needs to be a supervisor to actually see that people operate in the right way in that system. And what's interesting for me is also when you go to a lot of these conferences and so on, you hear the experience of a lot of people from different countries. At the end of the day, most of the key decisions comes down. There needs to be a buy-in from the top of a country. So you need your Minister of Finance, whoever, to actually want to see this succeed. And that's where us as an actuarial society, we are very closely aligned, and we've got close relationships with the regulator, with the National Treasury and so on, and we've got regular meetings with them, we do research for them and so on. So just to build that trust between us and the regulator. And I think that the regulator here earlier, he said that the relationship has also improved quite a bit over the last year, so I think that's something that's definitely positive, and you should just keep on building on that. And now in South Africa, the way, if the FSB comes out with new directives of new legislation, they'll always ask our input for it. So that's something that's very positive. So now if you've got the right structure in place, then you need actually someone to enforce it. In your case, you've got IPEC. In South Africa, we've got the FSB. And then again, it comes down to, you need that clear accountability, and you need the people to actually take this serious. So the regulator needs to be to have objectives. He needs to know what will his actual mandate be. He needs to be independent, needs to have the adequate resources and so on. And they need to focus on the right things. So it needs to be risk-based focus there where a failure of a company and so on will have a big impact in the economy and so on. And then also on the consultation and cooperation, like I said earlier, the regulator needs to consult with the industry, needs to consult with the various stakeholders and so on in place. And as I'll talk a bit later on, we'll just tell you and show you how many actuaries are actually involved in these discussions and consultations and so on with the regulator. And then obviously they deal with confidential information of the various players and so on. So they need to also ensure that they act in a confidential and a transparent manner, and they themselves need to be under governance and so on, that they can be accounted to be held accountable. So then finally the role of the actuary. Now I think the big thing that we also need to bear in mind is I think once you qualify as an actuary and so on, you study actuarial science and so on, you think actually, if you've got an actuary somewhere, then all your problems will be solved. You don't need to worry if there's a problem, who you're going to call, you're going to call the actuary. But then you actually realize that you're just part of a bigger team and there's other stakeholders involved and so on. So in a pension fund system, you'll have your auditors in place, there will be lawyers in place, there will be principal officers in place and so on. So I think also just knowing that you need to be part of a team, and a lot of what we also, especially in the pension side and funds where there's actually problems, if you need to, sometimes you do a valuation of say in 2015 of a 2005 year end. So it's also sometimes a bit after the fact. So also look at ways where you can actually be more proactively involved. And we had the regulator earlier saying, and it seems that he recognizes the personal professional promise. So the professional promise that it actually brings if you've got an actuarial qualification. Another important thing that actuaries can bring is just that big picture view. So a lot of times in pension funds or insurance companies or wherever, people get bogged down with the smaller details and where they're going to have the year-end function and where they're going to pay out this benefit or that and so on. But they forget to focus on the key things. What actually determines your retirement income? Are people saving enough? Are they actually, the contribution, is it say on pensionable salary, which is only half the guy's actual earnings? How does the expenses look? Those type of things. So to look at the key things that actually influences retirement income. As actually we can also become involved in the appropriate design. So in design funds to ensure that there's not that much place for people to actually be dishonest or actually extract value from a fund. Also to ensure that people and members are informed, that they know actually what benefits that they're going to get once they retire. Like the gentleman there said, give annual fund projections that people can know, but am I actually adequately covered once I get to retirement? And also, that's something where I want to see actually more and more involved is on the disclosure side and so on. If an asset manager comes in and he does his presentation, you interrogate things like performance fees and other costs and so on. That's not always obvious to pension fund trustees and so on. So just interrogating the costs, interrogating fees and so on, and just a real independent overview. So putting the mind of the customers and the pensioners and the members, if you put that first, then you'll have a bit of a different situation, I think, in most funds. And then just also bringing in the element of risk managers, of risk management, so to ensure that you can advise trustees and so on relevant risk management protocols you need to have in place, and you can also advise people on that. Just keep putting the thing in my pocket. Okay, so is there any question just first on the integrity side, the various role players and so on, before we go into the examples? Not. Yes, did I answer all your questions? That's great to hear. Okay. So I don't know if you've seen this before. It's a study that's done by MERS, and they actually give a score to retirement fund systems all across the globe. You see the score here at the top, it's a red one, and here at the bottom is a orange one if you don't pass. The blue one is a pass just marginally. And you'll see there's not that many countries from Africa. I think we're the only one. We actually managed to get a pass. Having shown you this, I must say, like with any survey, you need to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt. This was actually run by MERS Australia, and I remember I gave them feedback on South Africa, and I don't know how they scored us just based on that feedback. So just a note of caution, like with any survey, just take it with a pinch of salt. And I see they scored Australia as number 1, so I don't know if that also maybe be a bit telling. But they scored Finland number 1 in integrity. So let's see what they've got in place, why they scored number 1 in the field of integrity. So like we said earlier, there needs to be the right frameworks in place, which they have. They've got the various acts and so on in place, and then they've got an independent regulator with a dedicated retirement department, and each fund needs to have appointed actuaries. So I think that's what you'll see in any type of organization. If you want something to succeed and you want people to take it serious, you need buy-in from the top, and then you'll need people to act independently and have the right accountability and so on, and everybody knows what's actually expected of them. And the structure that they've got is probably similar to what you've got here in South Africa and what we've got in Zimbabwe, what we've got in South Africa. We've got the FSB, which is an independent body. They've got quite a bit of resources and people working there. We've got a dedicated retirement funds department in the FSB, and then most funds actually need a appointed valuator. So there's some conditions of how you can get valuation exemption, but most funds actually need an appointed valuator. But I think, having said that, even if you've got the right structure in place, you actually need the right people there, and you need adequate resources. Otherwise, it will most likely not work that well. Like Fourie said earlier, there might be an act on medical schemes here, but because it's maybe not enforced, it's not of much value. So that's important, so that the regulator can actually deliver on what they need to deliver on. Okay. And it also, at the end of the day, we also, and that's something, working with regulators more closely, you actually get to realize that the regulator isn't like this mechanical body. It's actually people sitting there on the other side. And you get people maybe with a high regard for actuaries, other people that might not have such a high regard, or they don't really understand what actuaries do. We had a talk the other day by someone from government, and he kept calling actuaries actuarians or actuarial scientists. I think they probably thought actuaries might do experiments with people's money or whatever, so they don't really trust them, I don't know. But also, for instance, we recently got a new head of the retirement funds department in the FSB, and the FSB, they were more leaning towards giving more funds valuation exemption, but because this person actually have worked with actuaries for our whole life and know the value that actuaries can bring, they actually lean now towards more funds actually needing to appoint valuators and actually making the criteria for getting valuation exemption actually stricter. So also just realize the human element and the importance of actually building relationships with the regulator, and also just informing them the value that us as a profession can bring. And having said that, so even though we scored a pass on our integrity and system and so on as a whole, there's actually quite a lot of things that are happening in South Africa, a lot of regulatory reform and so on. And specifically in the retirement fund space, there's a big focus on costs. So to reduce costs, there's been a massive move towards umbrella funds. So it's still quite an exodus from small standalone funds into umbrella funds. There's also a push from government to ensure that people have the adequate longevity protection, so to ensure that people actually annuitize their money, because a lot of people are invested in provident funds in South Africa, and there you can actually take 100% of your money once you retire in cash and spend it on whatever you want. Then the big thing that I mentioned is preservation, where we almost had a bill passed that would have forced people to preserve money, but then at the last minute it was actually thrown out. And there's some realities that we have in South Africa, and I'm sure you've got it here in Zimbabwe as well. If someone retires, resigns or he gets retrenched, he's got this big pot of money, but he can't touch it now. He can't eat food, but he's got, say, a couple of $1,000 here somewhere in account. So things that's important that you actually need to take into account. Then we've just recently launched our own tax-free savings accounts. It's also aimed at incentivizing people to save. It's non-retirement savings, and then also just simplifying the system a bit. So currently in South Africa we've got retirement annuities with its own tax treatment. We've got provident funds with its own tax treatment, and then we've got pension funds. So that's just to simplify that. And then we've also got the TCF legislation and so on. 5 minutes left. Oh, sorry. I'm looking at the crowd, not you, man. I see you enough. And that's an international trend that we see. There's a lot of focus on those retirement reforms, and so we're definitely not on our own in South Africa. Okay, so I'm almost finished. These are just 2 slides that I actually wanted to show you for free today, because I'm here and we know it's a bit of a classroom atmosphere. It's just on risk management in general, and they call this the wheel of misfortune, and it's just on actual corporate scandals and failures and actually things that took place, and that's just out of the learnings out of this that was as part of the ST9, the Sierra course. I don't know if any one of you did it, but this was actually the most useful part for me, is just a general what you need to look at when you implement a risk management framework is, number 1, know your business. Number 2, establish the relevant checks and boundaries. Number 3, set the various limits and boundaries. Number 4, keep your eye on the cash. 5, use the right yardstick. Number 6, pay for the performance you want. I think that's very relevant when you talk to brokers. And then balance the yin and the yang. So you need to have hard measures in place, but also the softer skill type measures in place. So that's me. I came in, I think, in my time, and yes, feel free to send me an email. And also from the Actuarial Society, we've got a lot of resources and so on our website, and I told the guys, pop me an email and so on if you've got any requests or how we can assist and so on. So yeah, thank you very much. And there's 5 minutes for questions if you've got any questions. Yes, my friend.
Are there any performance standards for FSB?
Performance standards? I actually don't know. But Rob, do you know? Are there any performance standards for the FSB? They've probably got their own internal...
Yeah, the FSB is a regulator. So don't expect it to set its own rules. No, seriously. So it has its own governance, yes. And it has a board, which in theory provides independent oversight of it, and it has a dotted line through to the Ministry of Finance. So the key with the regulator is to make sure that it's sufficiently independent and sufficiently accountable. And anybody who's a regulated entity would say that if it has performance standards, it hides them pretty well. But that, I mean, I don't mean to be facetious. It does certainly It does certainly seek to explain itself. It does so mainly through the annual reports. It does seek as much transparency as it can manage within the constraints of its responsibility.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I've got a comment, somewhat a question. The first one is to say that given the move to flexible compensation systems globally, retirement provision is now a choice of individual members of wherever they're employed. How can what sort of role can we be playing as a profession to influence the members at an appropriate time to remember that they will eventually get old and they'll need the money later on? The second thing is to do with the fact that most schemes are now defined contribution. The retirement planning is concerned with the final amount that you want to receive. And the volatility in the economic indicators makes it very difficult to do a 40-year projection for a 22-year-old person and claim that you are likely to receive X amount of pension if you put so much without making exaggerated promises of what's likely to happen. And finally, in the OECD countries, a large number of the old defined benefit schemes have huge actuarial deficits, which are proving very challenging. How do you think the profession could attempt to influence direction and policy in that regard?
Thank you, sir. That's quite a mouthful. I think it ties on to what I said earlier, is that it's very important for us as a profession in South Africa and you guys here in Zim to work closely with government, with your national treasury, with the regulator and so on. And for instance, because it's free choice and so on, but try to when you talk to the regulator, things like compulsion and so on, to try to improve your coverage in a country and so on. So to actually promote some of the design features that will lead to increased coverage and will lead to adequate provisions and so on. So probably a lobbying type role to ensure that you've got the right design features in place. And things like where people have the option to opt out, but it's actually when you join an employer, by default you actually get enrolled in a scheme and so on. So to think cleverly how through lobbying certain design features you can improve the system. I think that's very important. And then I think just on projections, it's probably of limited importance when you're still earlier, but I think then it just comes back to the basics. You need to know you need to save enough and live inside your means, within your means, avoid debt, those type of things. So just general type consumer education and so on, so that people know, don't buy the GTI, rather buy a second-hand Fox or whatever. So those type of things. Still have time. One more.
Just leading on from there, it's a question I usually ask. You find that DB funds were basically closed down because they're too expensive and replaced with DCs. Are we actually is it actually just a farce? Because we are replacing it with something that's cheaper. A DB was a real benefit. You would know how much you're going to get and so on. And this thing was expensive. Then you replace it with something cheaper. It keeps us in jobs, but is it really, unless someone puts so much more in terms of voluntary contributions, are we really just helping people have something for retirement, or it's just keeping us in jobs?
I think the key thing is it's probably been a move worldwide from more of a where people's got more of a father type instinct, and you need a paternalistic, moving away from a paternalistic type of view. So you actually give, and most companies probably move to a cost of company type benefit structure, and where you put the responsibility in people's own minds and pocket to actually make those decisions. And in that, there's actually a bigger need for advisors and so on. And previously, people didn't actually have to worry enough if they stayed with my company for 40 years, I'd be fine. So the need for advisors, getting the right advice, and so I think person is actually more needed now than it was previously. Good, thank you. I think we run out of time. Oh, okay. We've got time for one or two more.
Is it not double talk to talk of provident funds and then try to reform by talking of preservation and utilization?
The thing is, we want to move away from provident funds in South Africa, so that they actually can't take all the money in cash. So we actually want to move into a system where actually everything is like a pension fund. So and you can't take everything in cash when you retire, and also forced preservation, so you can't take your cash when you actually leave. So that's the move where South Africa wants to go to. Because the thing is, people just spend the cash when they actually take it out.
Thank you. My question is on maybe regulation in South Africa when it comes to DC pension funds. I think in Zimbabwe, most of the employers are struggling to contribute, and they are in arrears. So is there a set guideline which stipulates that as an actuary, when you then do your actual evaluations for the DC pension fund, is to say for someone who has not been, whose employer was not remitting contribution, when we are transferring the benefit out to the person, maybe to the insurance company, is there a stipulated period which says the person should get a full benefit or should get a reduced benefit in South Africa?
In South Africa, you need to pay the contribution. I think is it within 7 days or something after monthly. So there's actually we don't think there's arrear contributions, then it becomes a big legal thing and so on. So it's actually a contribution of the law. So we don't actually if we can't do like a reserve for arrear contribution. That's a foreign concept to us. So you actually legally obliged to pay those contributions, otherwise the company will be sued and they'll actually need to pay over those contributions.
Okay, thank you very much, Niel, for a fascinating talk. I hadn't realised up till now that I was an actuarian. Thank you very much. We do have a gift for you. We've got someone coming to present. Okay, it's I think about 11:46, so without further ado I think we'll move on to the next subject. James Oliver is not available to talk on Kenyan mortality, so there will be a panel discussion, but I'll leave that to the next people to say what that's going to be.